Hello everyone. So in this video, I'm going to itemize what the law says about rental property in Lagos State of Nigeria. So there's been a few questions about what the law entails. In Lagos State, before this actually, I thought there's a percentage that landlord can increase the rent. But upon research, I realized the law has not been concluded yet. It's still being formulated. So, but at present, in Lagos, the law governing rent increase for residential tenancies is primarily found in Lagos State Tenancy Law. And here's what it says in details. So there is no strict rent control cap at the moment, though I believe that's been proposed. The existing law does not specify a fixed percentage limit on how much a landlord can increase his or her rent. So what that basically means, it doesn't say landlord can increase rent by say 5%, say 10%. Instead, the focus is on whether the rent increase is reasonable. Section 37 of the tenancy law says that if a landlord increases the rent, the tenant can go to court and ask the court to decide if the rent is unreasonable. But as we all know, tenants rarely go to court. So, but if tenants choose to go to court, the general level of rent in similar neighborhoods will be looked at. That means the court will look at that neighbor. Let's say you live in Ikeja. So the court will look at the general level of rent in the Ikeja area compared to your present residence. And the court will look at the evidence from both the landlord and the tenant. And the court will also look at special circumstances affecting the property. If there's a need to increase the rent, say, for example, there's been flooding or there's been a critical damage to the property. So the court will look at whether the landlord require to increase the rent to make for renovation. If, for example, tenant had damaged substantial part of the property. So if the court finds the rent increase unreasonable, it can order a fairer amount. So also, notice is required. I know landlords generally give 6 months, but the law says between 3 to 6 months. So the law generally expects landlords to give reasonable notice before rent increase. It's often what is agreed in the rental agreement, in the tenancy agreement. What is agreed? If you agreed that rent will be increased the notice will be 6 months. That's what the landlord should do. But mostly landlords give 6 months notice before rent is increased. What landlords usually do is, let's assume you move in January. By month 6, which is June, if landlord wants to increase the rent, they'll give a notice by June. Obviously, your tenancy is from January to December, but by month 6, which is June, landlord will give you notice that, okay, by January of the following year, I intend to increase the rent from say 100k to 200k. So that means you're giving 6-month notice. So the increase can only be imposed at the right time. Nobody seems to follow it. So rent increases usually can only be imposed at the end of the tenancy or at renewal. So, but unless the tenancy agreement specifically allows an increase during a fixed term. So if the tenancy agreement says the notice we're talking about here can be done midway, which is June, or 6 months notice. If the tenancy agreement says that, then landlords can do that. But usually, rent increase should be at renewal, which is at the end of the 1 year interval. So if tenants choose to go to court, you are protected by law. So during this court process, the landlord cannot evict you. And there is, like I said earlier, there is a draft law. I think it's called Lagos Tenancy and Recovery Premises Bill 2025. So that is still being debated by the Lagos State House of Assembly. If that is passed into law, that will make all of this very, very, very clear. So I'll summarize that in my next video, shorter version.